in real life has low self-esteem, is, socially very awkward, but yet in the game, they become a great warrior.
Ah, yes, autumn. Truly the best season that is out there. Of course, some of you might disagree with me, but it is truly the period of the year where we get some of the most livable temperatures between the two extremities of winter and summer. So it's kind of like spring, except that unlike with spring, you don't really have to deal with the pollen in the air that's basically causing some people to feel like they're going blind for a quarter of the year. So arguably, more people are likely to enjoy autumn than spring because of that alone. And in Japan, it's also known as the season of eating, because of the fact that this would have more like tradition and in the history and past of all people, been the period of the year where people would harvest all of the crops. This would be where the food is the freshest and therefore it will be the best time to be eating some of the most delicious food around. And indeed, even when it comes to all of the different cafes and pop-up stores out there, this was certainly a period where I did see the most of all of these anime pop-up stores as well as pop-up cafes in particular that were offering some form of food as well. So let's talk about some of the stuff I went to, especially since because there was quite a lot of this kind of cafes as well. But before we get into the cafes, let's talk about some of the other stuff that happened during autumn as well. Because, well, I did eat a lot during autumn and I feel like I may have put on a little weight. Thankfully, most of that weight has been burned through the overworking during December and winter so far. So I feel like before we get into talking about more food and making me feel hungry again, we should talk about some of the other stuff I went to as well. So when we think about autumn, there were many other things that happened this autumn as well, right? And one of the things that did happen that was kind of interesting to me was the fact that Uzumaki actually got an anime during this season as well. And so I know what some of you might be thinking, right? But wait, Mr. Salaryman, I didn't know they made a new Naruto series. Silence, fool, we're not talking about that Uzumaki. We're talking about the series made by Junji Ito all the way back in the early, I guess, pre-2000s, late 1990s. For those of you who do not know who Junji Ito is, he is a horror mangaka who's made a lot of stuff with a bigger focus on body horror. And for those of you who do not know more of his horror stuff, you may know him for the one meme where the guy goes like, yes, this is the hole that was made for me, or something like that. And so it was quite interesting to see that his manga series actually got animated in this year. I feel like it's a little late considering the fact that I feel like, they could have made a anime about this instead of making the 20th season of Yami Shibai. But, some things, maybe no one wanted to pick up on it for some reason or another. We also saw the introduction of pop-up stores with relation to the IP as well. And this came in the form of a small pop-up shop in Shibuya Parko instead. Now, this was an interesting one simply because of the fact that it was located in a location that, while Shibuya does have a anime style mall that is within the location near the crossroads itself, this one was held in a more normal-ish fashion mall. Although on the floor where this was actually specifically held, it would seem that there was actually quite a few different other anime mini stores in the area as well, including a Evangelion pop culture-ish store, I guess, in the sense that they had a lot of like more fashion wear with Evangelion art and imagery on it, as well as a Bandai Namco store among others. But for the Junji Ito pop-up store collab itself, it was a very small one, and this one wasn't just any normal collab with the IP itself. No. This was a pop-up store for a collab of the IP with another IP. And you know what? Nothing says unknown, eldritch, potentially horror, mystery monsters other than, you guessed it, Sanrio. Okay, yeah, I don't see the link either, but it was pretty interesting to see that they were basically doing a collab with Hello Kitty with the silliness of it is getting to me a little, but hey, there are plenty of things that Sanrio has collabed with, and with this one, it didn't go all into that horror direction. It was more in the whole aesthetic vibe of merging the two, and the way that they did the coloring for Tomie with the Hello Kitty, as well as for the, what's the English name of the series? Beautiful Boy at the Crossroads. That's the name of the other series in English. I had to just double check it just in case. Both of those were the main focus of this pop-up store, where you basically had characters from both of these together with the characters from Sanrio, or sometimes a mixture of the Sanrio characters with some of the designs and vice versa. It was a pretty small one. I feel like part of why I wanted to talk about this was because of the fact that I found the contents of the pop-up store, the type of goods they were selling, to be pretty interesting because of the, I guess, disparity or gap between what you would expect from Hello Kitty as well as from the usual Junji Ito works, and the way that they actually managed to interestingly blend both of these together to create a very unique style, in my opinion. That and the mall itself did have a bunch of stuff for a bunch of other popular anime series as well it's for Bandai Namco, so I figured some of you guys might be interested. And so Shibuya Pako, not so much for this collab since this collab has already ended, but there are plenty of other things on the store, on the specifically the 5th floor, that you guys might find interesting. Thought I would share that as well. Didn't really buy too much from the pop-up store, but not gonna lie, the cups themselves, as you can see, the design itself is fairly fancy, and you do have the characters. For this one, it's the two male characters from The Beautiful Boy at the Crossroads. I don't really know these Sanrio characters all too well. Like, these are the ones that are, personally for me at least, I don't have that much of a connection with, specifically Sanrio, so the names elude me. I know this one though. This is the one that, if I'm not mistaken, everybody was shitting on when he won first place in like one of the popularity contests for Sanrio many years back. But I did enjoy the designs quite a lot. And more importantly, it feels like the kind of thing that, because of the pop cultural, I guess, status of Junji Ito as well as Sanrio, spoke to me as something that I could get now and give it to someone else as a gift in the future. Now, I feel like maybe like trying to give your mom or your dad, like, you know, Junji Ito stuff may not be the best thing to do. They might think you're a little disturbed in the head, which, hey, they were the ones who dropped me on the head as a kid, so I guess it's their own doing. But yeah, this one actually has Hello Kitty on it, and this is the one with Homie as well. And so with how interesting the design was, it really spoke to me as something that I personally wouldn't use, not because I don't like the design, but because I have too many like cringy Weeb cups around my home as is. Yeah. You know, I already have way too many cups that I know what to do with, so this doesn't feel like something I would want to use and open up, because it looks so pristine and you can actually feel the texture on the cup. So it actually is not just a print on, but an actual like embossed on designs. Hey guys, before the video carries on, hello, it's me from the future here. You can tell that it's me from the future because of the fact that the rumors are a lot cleaner than the past me in that video was having around him. Yeah, I just wanted to take this time to quickly thank you guys for the fact that the channel has actually reached 5,000 subs. You know, when I initially recorded the video that you're watching right now, it was before all of this had happened. I think the channel may not have even hit like 4K at that point, so really cool that it actually got to this point this quickly, and I'm thankful to all of you for it. If there's any questions you guys want to ask, because at this point I've already like posted a question in the community post somewhere, and some people have already replied with what they want to see for the 5K sub video. We're doing a room tour and a Q&A. If there's any questions you want for the Q&A, you can also put them in the comments of this video, and I'll try to answer them in that video if there's enough time. So once again, thank you all. I don't want to take too much time out of this specific video, so I'll be seeing you all in a future video. But that said, that's all from future me, and I'll be seeing you all in the next one. Next up, I did visit Reitaisai this time around as well, which, yeah, you know, with Reitaisai, I feel like I've already made 2 videos about it in the past. And the thing is that with this event, it's actually kind of something that I'm going to every single time. So I feel like talking about it every single time takes up space within this specific video style that I'm doing. From other stuff that could be interesting, but with Autumn, it feels like most of it was just pop-up cafes in the end. And one other thing which I'll be making a separate video on, so I figured I could talk more about Reitaisai again, simply because of the fact that this year it was also, I think, the first time in a long while where I actually found the event to be extremely packed. Like the last few times I've been going across, like even since the first video I made about Reitaisai, the event, while it was populated to some extent, it didn't reach the point where I actually had trouble moving around or navigating the halls, in the sense that, like, with a Comic Cat where you just get shoved and pushed around the entire time. But this, I think, might have been the first Reitaisai where the moment I went in, like, granted I did get there fairly on time. Instead of going there at the usual like 12:30, I went at the opening hours itself, and when I got in, it was just completely packed to the point that I really had actually some level of trouble just getting through to wherever I wanted to. But it was pretty interesting nonetheless to go through the event once again. You really did get to see all of the interesting Itashas. I feel like that's one of those things that most anime like doujin events don't really give people a place to just set up within the hall to show off their Itashas as well. But Reitaisai, it seems to be a tradition that they always do, and I feel like it actually adds a lot of bit to the event just to have the card displays, especially with some of them they actually set like mini shrines to the characters that they like within the card itself. That, and for me, because of the huge variety of doujin content that's created for Toho, it's always something that I can just go there and look for stuff that might be very interesting that I could use in daily life to some extent, and still also, like, you know, rep the Toho autism fam just a little. Like the necklace I'm wearing right now as well, some might think it's a little bit too tuney as well, something that you would think people would seal away with their embarrassing like history of when they were like 13 or 14 and thinking that they could banish this world or something. But hey, that is a world that it would seem, unfortunately, I'm still kind of stuck in. My brain may have never grown past the age of 14, but you have to admit it's actually pretty interesting. Fairly simple. It's meant to be like based off of like Father Andreas' wings, you know, the devil with the rainbow-ish colored like little gems on the rings. That's where the color on the necklace's corner here came from as well. You know, there are just many people at the event who basically make jewelry like this, make like accessories, as well as stuff like games, including the creator of the Toho Izakaya series that's on Steam. They were actually at the event, not so much selling the game, because you can get the game on Steam, and therefore there isn't really a reason for you to buy a physical copy other than for collection. But what they were basically making was a deck of poker cards for the character skins that were all in the game as well. So it's basically a full deck of cards which basically has all of the different Toho characters on it. Like every single character that turned up in the game is in this, which is really cool seeing it all compiled like this. And not only that, but they also have some for the main characters' alternate skins that are within the game as well. So every single unique skin for her is also in this game in its different forms. And with this, they actually managed to make not one, but two completely different decks, each with their own different set of designs for all of the cards as well. And the thing I really like with the cards is just the level of quality that was put into it. Like, it kind of reminds me of a separate deck of cards that someone actually gave to me as a souvenir when they came visiting from America, and they had like a super shiny deck of cards. With these, you kind of do have that kind of shine to them as well, because the bright portions of the card, like the suit itself, as well as the number plus suit at the top, as well as the background itself, all of it actually reflects and shines with a little bit of a shiny, kind of like with your very special, like super rare cards and Yu-Gi-Oh, which set off like the little neurons in my brain going like, ooh, shiny. It was really cool seeing the amount of quality that they actually put into these cards for people who really liked the game and wanted something to collect. But I guess physically, since as a game that started digitally, there never really were much in terms of goods for it. So seeing them at events like this and being able to get something for the game, even if it's just poker cards, is really interesting. You know, with enough of these, you might actually manage to be able to play like a game of Balatro in real life. It is still very interesting to see, nonetheless, how much popularity that Toho just has still in general. Especially when I went to the event, it's not like it was just like old singles in their 50s going around the event. Like, people were bringing their kids there, people in their 30s bringing their kids who were 5 or 6. There were many people who looked like they were still fairly young, and they were even bringing in a next generation of people who seemed to be fairly interested in Toho. So let's go into all of the collab cafes I went into during this period, since there really were quite a few of them. So the first one of which was for the Gakuen Idol Master. It's the newest Idol Master series that Bandai Namco has made. Frankly, one of the ones that I've enjoyed the most, in part because of the small character count within the game itself. A very bold choice. It does feel like creating, especially like mobile social game titles with fewer characters. I think that game has like initially like 10 thereabout. Is a very rare and risky move because it gives less like points for people to potentially want to pick up your game, and it focuses a lot more on character development to then get you to be attached to the character specifically. And so it's very hit or miss in that sense, but it is something I like. And it is something that has brought the company that helped Bandai Namco to produce the game to hit it really, really rich and actually grow really, really big. So good for them as well. The collab cafe itself was in the building I mentioned quite a while back in one of the videos I mentioned before about places I would find interesting to visit within Japan to look for Weeb stuff, which is the Shinjuku Marui, the OIOI building that is located near the Shinjuku Sanchome station. On the uppermost floor is actually a anime cafe specific like collab cafe area. The inside of the cafe itself actually fairly small but fairly well decorated as well. They basically have all the different like memory cards within the game, all of the scenes with all the different characters gathering. I don't know, the clean and sleek look of the cafe really feels like it matched really well with the color palette of the game itself, and that everything just made it feel very modern while also having that slightly classy look to it. And for the counter seats, you actually just had the character art panel just like directly in front of your face as well. So that was pretty cool. I actually managed to just pick one with the characters I like, so I could just sit there and stare at the thing, kind of pretending, you know, like in those like depressing like Korean like mukbang I guess restaurants where you actually had like the person sit across you or had a screen across you while you eat. It's kind of like that, except in real life with 2D characters instead. The stuff that you got was fairly standard, I would say. You basically got a coaster for each item you ordered off of the menu. fairly simple. You have the SD design as well as the character full art designs. Unfortunately, because of the fact that they have basically 9 characters and they have 2 variations of each character, getting what you want is a little tough. And I only really remembered about the collab on the very last day of the collab itself, so didn't really manage to get too much out of it in terms of all of these stuff. But I did manage to get 4 of those, as well as the menu paper, commemoration paper that they actually give with the cafe attendance itself. It's a little ruffled up on the side, pay no attention to that. This is because I have 2 copies of it. Basically, the person who was sitting beside me, he kind of ruffled his a little and he couldn't exactly like fit it into his bag because he didn't bring one along. So he's just like, hey, do you want this? And I was like, yeah, sure, it's free stuff. I mean, and he just brought it home with me instead. As for the goods at the event itself, I mean, it's not to my liking, I would guess personally. Like, it was a lot more of the full like art scene looking things where it's like all of the characters together, but it's just an acrylic block with all of the art on it. The whole acrylic block, acrylic plate, it looks nice to like have the character, or I guess the whatever series you're interested in, the art on the block itself there for like whenever you're gonna put it like a little frame on the side of your office table to remind you that this is why you're trying to kill yourself walking all the time. But the issue with it is just the fact that the ones sold there were all randomized, and I didn't really want to fall into a gambling debt just because I was trying to randomize an acrylic block. So I decided against purchasing most of it, and I just enjoyed the cafe for what it was. The food and drinks were fine. The drinks, especially like with most of these cafes, because of the fact that they do work with actual cafes to actually prepare all of this, tend to be a little on the better side than the food. And I did enjoy the drinks themselves quite a fair bit. The food itself was fine-ish, I would say. It wasn't the worst, it wasn't the most spectacular either. But because of its fairly average for a collab price point and the quality of the food, I would say it was actually pretty fine. Aside from that, I also went to 2 simultaneous collab cafes that were happening over at Tokyo Sky Tree. Yes, simultaneous, meaning they were both happening at the same time. And so I was eating from both at the same time, which were for the, I mean, both of the series are just slightly old. Wait, how many years back is this again? Oh my god, they are both 20 years ago. Okay, shit, how do I justify this? I went to 2 collab cafes for 2 series that are somewhat old at this point, both around 20 years ago. One was for Mermaid Melody Pichi Pichi Pichi, as well as for Fushigi no Futakao Hime. Or I guess the English names are Pichi Pichi Pichi. And the other one is Twin Princess of Wonder Planet, for those who want the English name instead. By some weird coincidence, both of these were simultaneously having a pop-up store happening over in the Tokyo Sky Tree, and so I decided to drop down at the request of someone who was kind of interested in both to give both a look at as well. And aside from the food that they were selling for both, there were also a pop-up store for both of these series. Both were actually inside of the Tokyo Skytree Mall itself, taking up a fairly decent chunk of it. Although by the time I got there, I guess maybe it's an issue of the timing of when I went, because of the fact that it was also very near to the end of the cafe, because I was kind of busy with work and a lot of other stuff at the time. Like I was actually traveling quite a fair bit for work. So I actually got there on I think the last or the second last day, and so for the Mermaid Melody one, they kind of already were packing up some of the stuff and they were like cardboard boxes in a way, but I did manage to still like get a decent shot of the store itself, as well as the display, as well as the goods themselves, because at least those were still largely preserved in a way that was actually still very presentable for people who actually want to take pictures and the like or purchase the stuff. And for the other series, the Twin Princess, it was also, for this one, it was actually still largely left untouched, I guess because of the location that it was in the middle of the store, so it would be very awkward for them if like they actually blocked the customers from walking around. So that one was still largely left untouched, and they actually got a very good view of it as well. And the thing is that when I say that these were 2 simultaneous collabs going on, I really do mean it, right down to the fact that between the 2, you had kind of some stuff sold on the collab like cafe menu that was kind of similar. Just to put it in the context, both of these collab cafes were run by the same group, which was the group that was also running both of the pop-up stores. And so you basically had 2 food stands that were side by side, where they were selling all of the collab foods for both of this series, which made it really easy to kind of tell, like when you walk from one to the other and you just kind of look at the menu and go like, wait a minute, that drink looks familiar, that spaghetti kind of looks like that spaghetti, because you know with spaghetti you kind of can just change the sauce and use the same noodles, and the stars on it were the same and all. But overall the food was actually pretty fine between the 2, And they actually did have stuff as in like proper menu items that were unique to each of the individual series to let you know like which, you know, collab cafe you were actually at. And yeah, even for things such as the spaghetti, which didn't really have any specific design to hint which series it was, they would at least put up a lot of flag on it so that you could tell which of the collabs this was for. And the flag itself is fairly easy to take back as well, so it's a little other thing that I have as a little collectible from the series. So it's a collab cafe as well. You also had collectible coasters that you got with each item on the menu that you purchased. And if you purchase stuff from the pop-up stores as well, you also got some collectible cards that came with it. Unfortunately, because of how late I went, apparently it actually managed to run out of the collectible cards itself, so that was a little unfortunate. But they did actually have those for collection if you actually purchase X amount from the store, like prior to it actually running out of stock. Truth be told, I was actually kind of surprising that it would actually reach that point. But it would seem that at the very least among its fans, it still has that level of popularity that it can actually sell out of all of the collectibles cards that typically you would think that they would have printed more of than the amount of goods. I don't know how the logistics typically works with this. I feel like usually you would just print about an equal amount to the like total value of the goods so that you can ensure that everybody can get it. But apparently, whatever the logistics, maybe they got more stock of the goods, but they didn't get for the cards. So it was unfortunate I didn't manage to get those, but overall, just having to go all the way down to the Tokyo Sky Tree itself, it was a pretty refreshing experience since it isn't really the place I would usually go to at all. So it actually completely like skipped my mind that there would actually be a bunch of anime collabs and stuff there. In fact, during the period where I was there was also a Jujutsu Kaisen collab going on for the Tokyo Sky Tree itself, not as a cafe of the like. And so like it really does seem like they actually do run quite a few anime like collabs and the like there sometimes, so it might actually be a place that you might want to actually pay more attention to if you are already going to be visiting there when you're in Japan. Aside from that, there were also another 2 collab cafes that I actually went to during the period. Yes, that's how many there were, and that's how like often I was basically out of the house running between all of those different cafes while also being out of town actually on like business trips as well as like going for all the other stuff that happened during the period. So yeah, unfortunately most of it is just me eating and a ton of different types of food. But I heard that people online like this thing called food porn. I don't think this is exactly it, and I don't think that's exactly the type of porn that I think it is. But let's just say you're gonna get wet with the spaghetti. So the other 2 that I went to were both for Blue Archive. One was the Blue Archive Animax Cafe for summer. So for that one, it was basically for the Rabbit Squad for Blue Archive, as well as the little police doggo and her doggo police friends as well. So for the actual like commemorative like sheet that you could actually turn into a poster or frame up if you wanted to, it was mostly just the 4 members of Rabbit Squad. And you basically got this for attending the cafe in and of itself. And so when it came to the actual collectible coasters that they gave out for whenever you purchase something off of the menu itself, you actually did get the full cast of characters. So you do have like Miyako as well as Saki, and then you also have the ones for Kirino, as well as Kana. So the thing with this one as well is the fact that they do have both the SD as well as the normal character art. So unfortunately for me, I actually got the SD character art for this one for Kana as well as Kirino. I don't know, personally, like once again, for me at least, I would rather the full art itself, as I do find that it looks a lot more to like what I really enjoy about the character design. And so like for Kana, who I think is probably my favorite character among the 6, aside from Mikuru Beam, who's apparently playing the dumpster girl. Aside from that, there was also this little mini flag, and I don't know what's with all the flags that each of these like different collabs are giving out, but the little flag for the KSPD, the little like Doggo Ran police force in the games universe that came with the food. Well, the food itself, it actually was, though I have to say, fairly expensive. Like this might actually be the most expensive collab that I've been to for the Animax Cafe across all of the ones that I've talked about the past 2 years. Like we have been to quite a few, and the prices have always varied. And that's something I always found a lot more interesting with the way that the Animax Cafe does its pricing, which is that they actually price it differently based off of the IP. So when we did the Maho Ako one a little while back, with that one, it was actually fairly cheaper in the sense that like I think for this Blue Archive one, the food range was around maybe 1,500 to 1,900 yen. That's how expensive it was. But with the Maho Ako one, I think it was mostly like about maybe 1,200 to 1,500 tops. The food itself was fine. Like I don't know, like it felt a little more underwhelming than usual in the sense that like I think one that in the Discord we were memeing quite a fair bit was the fact that they actually had like a donut as well as like a little bit of a snack on the side as one of the dessert menu items for about 3,400 yen. In the kakigori, which is the shaved ice as well, it's like it looks so plain on the surface when they showed it in the image, because well, I get that they were trying to mimic the helmet that they usually wear in the game itself, which is pure white as well. So maybe they were trying to make the shaved ice like themed after the helmet look of the same color, but because of that, it actually looked like plain ice instead, which actually it really wasn't. There was actually still syrup on it. It was just intentionally syruped in a way to try and maintain the original color that it had. But yeah, with that one, like the food overall wasn't bad. Like even some of the full meal items that they had there, which I didn't manage to grab, that I looked at on the menu, like the kana, yakitori and edamame set, as well as Miyako's ebi and it's a prawn and broccoli abijo. I don't know what, pardon my French, I have no idea what I'm saying right now with abijo, but like it's all in katakana, so it's a little tough for me to figure out. Yeah, it looks like fine food. I could see myself maybe paying like 1,000 yen tops for this maybe, but seeing it priced at like almost double of that was what made it a little tough of or a bit of a steep ask. Even for the drinks, 800 yen for a single drink was it gave me a little pause to like think about it, especially since I got the kana coffee, which it was pretty much just like fairly normal-ish coffee. You couldn't even bring home the cup. Like if you could actually bring home that cup with a little paw print on it, maybe I would actually consider it worth the 800 yen, because you just get a free mug cup along with it, but you didn't get to keep the cup, so overall that just felt a little expensive. Overall, like I keep complaining about the price, but I did enjoy the experience. You know, the food there was fairly nice. The way it was themed for some of it, especially for the desserts as well as the drinks, was actually nice enough that I actually overall kind of did still enjoy what I was consuming. And the decoration of the cafe itself, while it is still very like the standard Animax style of decoration, was still something that I could just sit down there and just appreciate the art and just walk around and enjoy the way it was decorated as well. So overall, I don't have too many complaints about everything else with the cafe itself, and the experience was still fine. And lastly, but not least, there was another Blue Archive cafe that actually went on during the period as well. If I'm not mistaken, this second cafe was specifically to celebrate the 3.5 anniversary, which, you know, as a result, makes it feel a little late considering the fact that the event that it was meant to celebrate and that it was themed after had already basically ended 3 weeks prior to the start of this collab cafe. But that said, overall, the collab cafe itself was still an interesting experience. It took place in the Smile Base Cafe, which is located in Ikebukuro, land of the BL. Sometimes you see series that aren't SPL, and this happens to be one of those cases. Although with the Smile Base Cafe, I have to say the place, like I haven't been there in a long time, so maybe it's just the dementia settling and I just completely forgot about it, but it looks so shady just going there, to be honest. Like when I walked past it, it just looked like a very ordinary like street in Japan. There was no sign, no nothing to like point saying like, hey yo, look, Blue Archive Cafe over here or something like that. Literally, you just walk past and you just see a big sign saying Smile Base along one of the buildings. I thought I was supposed to go in and go up or something to like one of the upper floors, because they didn't really point out which floor to go to. But then I realized that like in order to get to the cafe, you instead had to look to the right of the elevator, go down and set of stairs that seem to lead into some shady looking basement, and then walk all the way in, and then you'll see the stuff there. You know, for a second looking just down into it, I thought I was gonna walk into a scam or something and just get like both of my kidneys robbed from me as I went down the stairs or something. But thankfully it was nothing shady of the sort. It was just a underground cafe like in the basement deep inside that shady looking hallway that the cafe was actually located. So for this cafe, you actually had to book. Like most of the cafes, even for the Animax one, typically they would ask you to reserve a space. But because the Animax cafe typically doesn't get fully packed, that's usually fine and you can actually get space. But for the small base one, they actually require that you must book, and that booking is actually required for them to actually just ensure that you can even enter in the first place. Even if there are spare seats, they actually won't allow people to just walk in for it. And they do apparently seem to track like what you purchase in terms of goods and to your specific reservation as well. So I guess maybe they have like some very strict scheduling or tracking to ensure that you don't order more than you should be. But overall, the inside of the cafe itself, it felt more, and I guess like even the design of the store itself, it feels a lot more like an actual bar than a cafe, where there are actually seats that look like they're meant more for a bar instead as well, although those weren't actually being used during this specific collab. But aside from that, the inside, the design of the cafe itself was fairly simple overall. You did have the standees for the characters, and you did have a big projector screen actually just playing some of the PVs as well as trailers from the game. Aside from that, you also have the life-size tapestries as well as the posters that were set up around the area, as well as the little character standees that they have at some of these events that you usually see, that some series actually let you like actually purchase those little cutouts of, with those actually lining the bar table instead. The food itself overall was fine, although I would say that the interesting thing on the one hand was the fact that they actually had different food served at each of the locations. So this was held in multiple locations across Japan, one in Tokyo, one in Nagoya, one in Osaka, and one in Sendai. And in each of these locations, you basically had a specialty dish. So they kind of mixed it up and kept it fresh. And with each one, I think they actually gave out a specific collectible postcard as well, based off the character who the food was themed on at each of these specific cafes. So I don't know how I feel about that. On the one hand, it feels like it basically kind of means that if you're a big enough hardcore fan, you kind of need to travel between all four to actually get the postcards for all of the characters if you wanted a full set, or you had to purchase it off something like Mercari at a probably very expensive price. And if you wanted to experience everything that the collab actually had to offer, it probably would be quite difficult as well as a result. Overall, the food and drinks actually did look a lot more fancy, even if the quantity wasn't on the same level. Like for some of the drinks as well, it actually looked like something that could have been a cocktail instead, and it actually was quite enjoyable. I think it was specifically a berry drink, the one that I actually got there for one of the two drinks. I think that one that I actually got was a mocktail sangria, so it's basically a sangria except that without the alcohol, so that the kids who ended up going to the cafe could actually just like get the drinks as well without feeling like they were kind of left out from all of it. So I guess in a way it may have been accurate that the place may have actually been a bar that was also being repurposed as a cafe sometimes for all of these events, and there might actually be situations where they do serve alcohol instead. But overall, the two drinks that I got, I really don't have too much complaints on. They both tasted fine, and the like aesthetic design of them actually made them feel a bit more unique and a lot more fitting to the characters themselves as compared to the ones on the Animax Cafe. Like the darker colored sangria was basically designed, or I guess themed after Misaki, as well as this like tealish Hatsune Miku looking ass colored drink who was basically themed after the Hatsune Miku ass looking character. And then for the individual location meals as well, I actually got the one that was like unique to Tokyo, which I think was supposed to be like saoris, like Western plate style food. I don't know. We have the term like Western plate the same way people have the term like this is Chinese noodles in like the American movies, I guess. So it's a little generic, and I would argue that like probably no one in the West eats their burgers like with rice on the side, nor do they eat ebi fry. But I guess in a way all of these things were foods that Japan kind of learned to make from the West. So I guess it kind of fits, even though it's served in a way that's more Japanese, if anything. But even with that, it actually looked really fancy. Although the ebi fry, the ebi, I guess tempura, it feels like it's just a little lacking. Like that felt like there was a lot more flour than there actually was a ebi or prawn inside. So that was a little disappointing. But aside from that, the meal itself was fine and filling enough. Unfortunately, because of the fact that it was only reservation, it made it really hard to get a second booking for the place, so I didn't manage to go back and try the rest of the stuff. But overall, the food itself was great, and the coasters that you got from the event were all pretty nice as well, I have to say. Like, in spite of the fact that the Collab Cafe was based after the four characters who already had a summer event a few weeks prior, the design for this event's like summer outfit was actually different from the ones from the actual event itself. So I found it pretty cool that they actually bothered to prepare a completely different set of like character designs for all of the art used for the event. Then and price wise, this was I guess it was a little better. The drinks were on the same price, being around I think 800 yen each, so the drinks weren't that much cheaper, but the food itself, that quantity for the 1500 yen, like don't get me wrong, it's still very expensive by a large margin. But with all of this cafes for all this collabs, it kind of is. So typically, it's like there's a little bit of a difference in expectation that I have, that like I'm paying more for the experience as well as for the other stuff that you get from the cafe rather than for the food. But even for this one, it's like it did feel still a little steep for the food that you get, and I just feel like maybe it's because of the fact that I just went to the Animax one as well that it made this one feel that little bit better. But yes, that would be most of the stuff that I went to during the very epic season of food, which was autumn, in terms of both events, pop-up stores, as well as for pop-up and collab cafes as well. Frankly, the amount of like food related ones certainly was a lot more than I was honestly expecting at all. Like I feel like I actually did eat a lot more and I spent a lot more on food during that period than I usually would and most other times, and like I was kind of short on cash at that period of time, so it made it kind of rough to want to spend even more on the collab cafes. But I'm just glad that I actually managed to go to and enjoy the vibe as well as the stuff that you can get and see at each of the individual collab cafes. And I feel like because of the unique locations that some of these were held in, I did manage to go and visit areas of Japan where I didn't even, I guess within Tokyo, where I didn't even know there were all of this different like Weeb stuff, as well as stores that actually sold stuff for some of these IPs as well within those buildings. Though that said, there's still some stuff that didn't make it into this video, such as the Blue Archive Kobe stamp rally, which will probably come in a later video, which means that it's gonna be really late by the time that video comes out from when the collab stamp rally thing with Kobe actually happened, since that also happened in the, I think, the near tail end of autumn, just about entering December, so we can always fit that into a separate video. But that's it, that's all for me for today. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to the very cool people over here who helped to support this channel, and thank you to Hayden the Historian for epically helping to edit this video. If there's any of the stuff that you saw here that you might be interested in, like some of it I do have spares, like Kiori Coaster, as well as for the Blue Archive stuff, as well as some of the Twin Princess, as well as the Mermaid Melody stuff here. So if you're interested in any of this, do feel free to let me know, and I'll be more than willing to like send it your way if you really want it. You don't have to like do anything special. I'll probably put some of it up in the Discord, like as a little bit of a giveaway in the usual thread section of it for a specific thread for this video. Though that said, that's all for me for today, and thank you all once again, and until next time, take care and bye bye.